So we're talking about dividing the land of Israel for the first time, and it was done by means of lots that were um, used to determine which tribe received which area. And surprisingly, the lots, when they were pulled out, they would call out. They would call out. So, like I explained before, there were two boxes, and each one had 12 cards. In one box, the cards just had numbers on them, 1 to 12. The other had the names of the 12 tribes. And the Kohen would pull out two cards, one from each box, and say, number 2 is the tribe of Yisachar. Right? So, but he wouldn't say it. He wouldn't say it. The card itself would call out. Card itself. And that's how they determined which tribe got which area. But the fact is that's not how they determined, because before that, Elazar HaKohen, the high priest, he had this breastplate, and it also said the same thing. He verified which tribe, which. And not only that, it says before in the Torah that the biggest tribe got the biggest portion. So they could have done it just logically. They didn't even have any. They didn't even have any of these, holy, godly steps. You just said, okay, you're the biggest tribe. You get this area. You get. But they didn't. They used it. They used the lots and the. So the Rebbe said, okay, you want to use lots just to verify it. But why did the lots have to call out? Why did the lots have to? I mean, it's just a meaningless miracle. But they had to call out. So the Rebbe said it wasn't meaningless. It's coming to tell us that every step that you take to accomplish something good, that those steps themselves are also holy. Don't think that the only thing that really matters is the final goal, right? The final goal of a thing. It's not so. Every step is also important to the degree that everything is even holy, to the point that it's even miraculous. So therefore, a step which was just an incidental step in deciding which tribe goes to which place, it could have been decided other ways, and it was decided other ways. But we're just doing it because God told us to do it. And it wasn't a special commandment on its own, right, to do it. But God said this way should be done. So, okay, I'll do what God says. No, not only when you're doing the right thing is it important, but also and the steps that it comes to do that right thing is important. So the right thing here is dividing up the land of Israel. And here the Torah is telling us that even the steps that you take to do this are important. For instance, you want to go and the synagogue and pray every morning. You want to go and pray. But on the way, you meet somebody. On the way, you see somebody that needs something. On the way, you took a wrong turn. Something happened. The car broke down. That's this. All these things that happen are not just incidental. Everything is important. And everything is, in a way, as essential as the final goal. The journey is as important as the goal. Huh? Okay, so let's see it in the language of the Rebbe. Alpis, according to this, Yesh Lomar, we can say, Hatam, that the reason for the miracle of the speaking lots, the speaking cards, is Kashem, just like Etzem Avoda, just like the main service of conquering the land of Israel, had to be complete. The machshava, thought, speech, and action. Similarly, also, benogei Allah Chana, every step to prepare it, and every preparatory the incident for this had to be for dividing the land up. For instance, dividing the land up al pi agorol, according to these cards, hagam shagorol, even though these cards, these lots, who hagdam is just a preparation, and it's just a means to the goal, which the goal is dividing up, kibush v'yashav oretz, namely conquering and settling the land of Israel. Nevertheless, yesh lo gam chashivot latzmo. It has an importance to itself. Therefore, hayagam agorol. Therefore, the lot itself, betachlit hashlemot, had to also be total. in thought, speech, and action. Hagorel atzmo, the lot itself, brought about all of these dividing of the land up and settling the land up, and also birur, to ascertain the truth, the pirsum hadavar, and to advertise the truth. Gorel atzmo yatzavach, to let you know that the steps you take in ascertaining the truth are also true. And the completion is in the fact that the lot itself contained these three aspects of human, accomplishment: human thought, speech, and action. In addition to the fact that they had to pick out the cards, and before that they had to write down on the cards, the 12 cards, the names of the tribes, and also the names and and on the other one they had to write down the numbers, or the numbers of the areas that were area number 1, area number 2. V'machshava, that was the deed. What about the thought? The thought and the intention you had to have. In addition to the fact that it had to be Ruach HaKodesh, there had to be Holy Spirit, that's also thought. But in addition to the fact that you had to write down the numbers, and you had to have the intention of doing it in order to choose which tribe, which area, but there also had to be, that's thought and action. There also had to be speech. Totally unnecessary, but it was necessary for wholesomeness. There had to be not just thought and action, the intention and the deed. There also had to be speech. Chalukat ha'oretz, the dividing of the land, had to be al pi hagorel, from the mouth of the card, of the lot. Nifel, that made a completion of the lot itself. The lot, so to speak, became human. They had thought, speech, and action in it. Ach b'goral, only in the lots, and not by anything else. The lots determined the land, even though you didn't have to have the lot. It says, oh yes, you did. It seemed to be incidental. It seemed to be something casual. It seemed to be something unnecessary. But because it was one of the steps in dividing the land, then that gave it an infinite importance, and completion was only if there was in it thought, speech, and action. Since then, in addition to the lot itself, the action and the thought behind it, She'arei said that it showed how to divide up the land of Israel. Right, the lot had the action, the numbers were there, the actual physical, had the intention, that's the thought, why you had to pick lots, right, in order to divide the land up. But it also, the Gorel itself would scream out in a way of clear, that it was clear and revealed, so there wouldn't be any doubt whatsoever that I, a Gorel, Aliti, I am the lot that came up for this such and such a tribe and this such and such a tribe. So if ever one of the tribes had any doubt, why do I got this land? I don't want by the river. I don't want to be near a river. I want to be in the river in the middle of the mountains. So it says, listen, you can think whatever you want to, but this was determined by God. How do you know it was determined by God? It said, because there were lots, and not only that the lots were drawn, in addition to the breastplate, in addition to the logic behind it, that the biggest tribe got the biggest area, but also the lots even screamed out. To that degree, God wanted us to be sure that this was his choice. Every person got their land because this is what God wanted. So therefore, after that, no one had any doubts. No, the lot would speak, not just in thought and deed, because in order that the lot would be, that there should be a lot, there should be these cards, and Mukhrach, it was necessary that there should be thought and speech. That was a necessary thing for the commandment. Maisa, Gorel, etc. And that's the way that things are, right? You choose that, you flip a coin, whatever. You decide. It was totally unnecessary that there should be speech, that the lot should speech. But Evan Abochen, the final verification that this was done totally complete, was that the lot itself spoke. The fact that the lot itself spoke was totally unnecessary. But why did it speak? To show completeness. Shemagala et totzaot agorol, this revealed the results were total. Habira vegilui, ultimately clear and revealed that this is what God wanted. Vazem mora, this indicates that the lot itself, that even the steps used to achieve the goal of dividing the land up, that the steps themselves were totally complete. Thought, speech, and action. Just like it teaches us something about ourselves, that speech is the main thing. Even a bochen, איך הדבר החדור באדם העובד, הכובש, וגם איך הוא פועל בהזולות הנכבש. What is speech? What is speech? In Judaism, in Hebrew, there's a lot of names for man, right? Adam, Ish, but the name for the, how do you call it? The genesis, is called the type of creation. The plant, there's plants. That's one whole, how do you say, species. That's the wrong word, species. I think it's a genus. I think it's called a genus. Anyway, the whole, there's minerals, there's plants, there's animals, and there's human. How is human called in Hebrew? Minerals are called domem. Domem means they can't speak. They're quiet. Plants are tzomeach. Animals are chai. And humans are called medaber. It's the opposite of domem. Opposite of medaber means they speak. A human being, the uniqueness of a human being is that he can speak. He can speak intelligently. You can question a person. You can come to understand who the person is, unless the person is an accomplished liar. But generally speaking, what a person says, that's who he is. And even more, one of the main, how do you say, unique, how do you say, expressions of what a human being is how he connects with other people, what he says to others. Right? You're sitting in a room, what he says to other, all of a sudden the person starts speaking out against the Jews. Well, what is it? All of a sudden you realize who the person is, right? You realize what's in your mind. All of a sudden the person starts talking about, how it's necessary that we have to save lives of people. Suddenly you see that the person is kind. How a person speaks. Speaking, that's why a person is called medaber, because it connects one person to another. That's the uniqueness between a person and an animal. Animals are totally selfish. But human beings can go out of themselves, and that's mainly with speech. So that's the thing of the lots. The lots, not only did they have thought and action, but they also had speech to show on the human side of the lot. The lots were also important as humans are. And the reason is why a panini is munach lagamri b'kol avoda shu osa afilu avoda shu hakdama l'davar acher. So he says, okay, like this. Remember we talked about this, the idea of a panini. What's a panini? A panini is a person who's genuine. A genuine. That was like a very one of the highest praises you could give to a person, a chassid, is that he's a panimi. A panimi means that he's a genuine person. What he thinks, what he says, what he does, it's all connected to the truth. He's not lying. He doesn't lie to others. He doesn't lie to himself. In thought, speech, and action, he's a panimi. He's connected deeply to the truth, and he only does for the truth. That's what he means. Truth means whatever you do, you're connected to the truth. Whatever you do, whatever you say, I feel even certain things which are just a preparation for something else. Masber explains the Rebbe 2 reasons. Zem Moreh, this shows ala emet v'panimiyot, on the truth and the deepness. Shehechan shenimsaim, this is the truth and the inside. Maybe the perfect example of this is learning Torah or doing commandments. You have a religious person and he learns Torah, and he's very good at it. He learns the Torah and he understands, he can explain to others. He becomes the head of the yeshiva. Everybody has questions, comes and asks him, he does the question. And he does the commandments, right? But if something gets in his way from learning the Torah, or the commandments is he gets angry like a little child. If he doesn't get exactly the way he wants, because he's a very intelligent person and he knows what's going. If someone comes up and says, you're not intelligent, what you just said was stupid. Ooh, he gets angry, he gets depressed. If he doesn't get his job, he gets depressed. What does it show? It shows that he's doing it really for himself. It shows that, but when he's learning Torah, he's great. When he's doing the commandments, when he's praying, he's totally devoted to the creator of the universe. It's just impressive to see him. It's impressive to see him. But if he loses his temper on the little things, right? Like, this doesn't work. My shoelace didn't work. He gets aggravated, gets angry. So you see that he's not 100%. He's not called a panimi. He's not called attached to the truth. Because if he was attached to the truth, he would be attached to the truth all the time. Only by means, that's why a person that's attached to the truth, a panini, that he's really, how do you say, a genuine Jew, you can notice it by the incidental things, how he reacts to things. Why? Because that shows on the inside of himself that he's totally, all the time, connected to God and not to himself. Right? That if he gives, how you can notice, you can judge him by the incidental things. The Davka is Hakdama, only by means of the introductory things, the preparation things. This can be really, the essence can be really done in totally. If the person, I remember hearing a story about Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, a blessed memory. He was a Litvische Jew, a very tremendously scholarly, genius person, knew Torah very well, especially in law. He was a very big expert in law. The Lubavitcher Rebbe really loved him very much, and he would ask him even questions. He would send people to him for questions. And so I heard a couple stories about him, but one story I heard was on the way from his house to the synagogue, and he got a lot of honor. People, I don't know, he would talk to the kids on the way. He would talk to the children on the way, and he would, the children were playing. They had no idea who he was. That he was a great man or something, just a nice man. And he would talk to them, and they would help them, whatever they wanted to. The ball would go across the street. He would give it back to whatever it was. But he was just a nice person. It was a nice person. I heard other stories about him, the same thing. What does he have to be a nice person for? What's the point? It didn't help his reputation. I mean, maybe somebody noticed it and they wrote it in a book and it impressed me. But in general, his whole thing was he was a genius in learning the Torah. He was a religious figure. He should be great in religious things. What's helping talking to little children on the way? That's got to do with religion. Says the Rebbe exactly the opposite. That's why a lot of people say that Judaism is not a religion. Of course, Judaism is definitely a religion, but it's called the Dat Emet. It's a true religion because it doesn't just deal with religious things. It deals with everything in the world. Every part of creation is part of Judaism. And if you are devoted thought, speech, and action in heart to every little detail, you consider it to be somehow or other part of the whole big picture, then you're not just interested in your goal to sit and learn Torah or to go to heaven or to be a big man, to be impressive, get your name in the papers. Those are nice things. Nothing wrong with those things. Nothing wrong with those things, right? But the steps that you take to get to those things are equally as important. And if those steps are not important, it means that when you get to the real important things, it really won't be taken to you in a true way. Heyot, because Jesu Hakdama Emiti, because the preparations for a thing are true preparations according to the Torah, right? He had to walk through the streets in order to, there are children that are there. You're supposed to appreciate all of God's creations. So he did. He appreciated God's creation. But you can't think there's my house and then there's the place of learning and the synagogue, and what's in between is not important. So B'meila, it's like the journeys of the Jews in the desert, right? The goal was to leave Egypt, which they did, and get to the land of Israel, which they didn't. So on the way, it's just like, delays, just let's get this thing over with. No, every step is important. Every step is, and every step within every step, every detail within the step. Therefore, the more that attention that a person pays to the preparations for a thing, and he won't be, how do you say, just get it over with, he will be able to increase in the depth and really appreciating the essential thing itself. I mean, maybe I'll tell you another story about Rabbi Moshe Feinstein. I read this in a book, so it's true. they say, I think I've told the story before. Maybe it'll be today's story. You know what? That is going to be today's story. Remind me. Today's story will be the story of Rabbi Moses Feinstein. I'm going to write this down. I'm going to write this down so remember. Okay, ready? Yeshlo said we're going to even add on. So this sense that God determined that the nature of the world is that before you reach a goal, etzem adavar, ovrim, you have to go through first of all preparations and I'm going to say and forwards. There has to be steps, preparatory steps before you get to the goal. That's the way God made the world. Oh, kama hachanot, or maybe you have to have a lot of preparations, in order that a person and the world should get accustomed to this. Or the language of Hasidut, you have to make a vessel for the light of God in the world. Vessel. And therefore, therefore, all the preparations and the hakdama. What's another word for preparation? A preparation, preparatory steps. There must be a forward. Therefore, the preparations and the forward that has to be done beforehand is atzmo megat lekalita etzem inyan epipinimiyot. The more attention that you put into the preparations of a thing and the steps which lead to something, then the more when you reach that thing will be meaningful to you. Lochen mikabelet, therefore therefore it will be received chashivut la'atzmo. Therefore, each step is important in itself. Me'an chashivut is something like the importance of the thing itself. Therefore, you have to make this in total completion, wholesomeness before you reach to the essence of the thing itself. Like getting married. A person gets married. It says on one, it used to be, says that a person would meet a woman in the street, say, you want to get married, then we get married. Right, there would be no problem. Nowadays, there's a whole preparation. There has to be also an engagement period before, and then before the engagement is given time for the man to prepare, for the woman to prepare. But you have to prepare also physically, and you also have to prepare spiritually, right? So he said, you have to prepare. You have to find a house. You have to find a place to live. You have to find a neighbor. You have to find a job. And there's all of these things are not just things you have to get out of the way. Just no, all of these things are also holy steps for a holy goal. And these things must be also given holy importance. That's the whole idea of education. Like it is education. Educating a child means you educate him for a goal. For a goal. Shakiv and Shazui, since the education is a preparation, a necessary preparation for doing the commandments, for instance. Look, and therefore, Harizah Makabel, therefore, it has a special importance on its own. Even more. In a certain way, this is even higher than the commandments themselves. Like we said before, the commandment of education in some way is even higher than what you're educating for. Therefore, the whole idea of education, even though the education is not a goal in itself, it's just educating you to be able to live a life, to do Torah, to go do commandments. It says, but the fact is that every detail of education has to be given total importance, but omikyoter even more. Kivan shed kavana, that the intention, this whole idea of making a dwelling place for God in the world, this is one intention, kavana achat, from the one God. In addition to this, shekol davar ba'olam nivra b'koach ha'atzmos, that everything was created from the essence of God. Shehu levad, of the God alone, has the ability and the power to create something from nothing. Umila kavanazu, and filling this intention completely is done by means of all the details of the world. Kolel, including gam inyanim she'im rak achana, preparation for something else. You want to make a dwelling for God, of a God in the world. It's not just that, the temple is going to come, Moshiach will gather all the Jews together to Israel, and that's it. What is it so important what happens in the middle? Let's just get this out of the way. It says, Rebbe, no. Every step to bringing Moshiach is important as Moshiach himself. in this attention, the goal which was set up by God, Yeshnu b'kol davar, there are also steps to achieve this. Everything in the world, all of the details, even the most seemingly insignificant details, and all the preparations, which seem to be just bothersome explanation, nevertheless, all of these have the power of Ein Sof, of the infiniteness of God. Koach ha'atzmut, the power of God's essence, which is in every detail. She'oseh davar, that makes the thing itself true. Bal tachlit v'kavana. So every person you meet on the way, everything, every step you take is important. And therefore, there has to be service completely, thought, speech, and action. By means of completion of the thing, a preparation for the essence of the thing. In even more detail, al derech zeh, also thought, speech, and action themselves. Listen, everything though has to be done, of course, in proper measure. And you learn this by experience. I know somebody that he worked for a Chabad institution, and his job was answering the phone. So he answered the phone. So really, answering the phone, you're just a middleman. You just connect people to someone else. Okay, so what are we saying here? If you're a middleman, if you're just a means to something else, so you shouldn't consider yourself just to be a means to something else. Even what you do, what you say, has to be treated as though that's the goal. That's the goal. But you can't overdo it. I know this person that he worked, and everyone that would call up, he would enter into a conversation with him. What would you like with that? Well, maybe, have you thought about doing this? Have you thought about doing that? Right? Okay, everything has to be done in the proper measurement. In other words, you have to do what is the truth and not what you want. Not what you want. So everything, therefore, has to be measured out properly to be important. If you do too much, then that's also not, you're putting too much importance into the details. So that's also sticking yourself into it. You're supposed to treat it as the way that God wants you to treat it, but you have to treat it the way God wants you to treat it. You can't just have no importance whatsoever to it, right? Just answering the phone and say, yes, what do you want? What do you want? Hello, good morning. Hey, my name is this, good. God bless you. How can I help you? Something to say nice, but to be efficient. But it has to be involved in also thought, speech, and action. For instance, let's take in the world, thought and speech, they are a preparation usually for a deed. But you want to build a house. So you have to have the plans, you have to talk to people. The main thing is to build a house. Shamaisa, that actually doing things, that's the main thing. Putting on the tefillin is the main thing. Either you have to make money to buy the tefillin, you have to go to the store, you have to order it, you have to talk to them. It says, but the thought and the speech are just means. They're sort of extra, right? It says, no, by means of the thought and the speech, this brings to deed. And the deed is founded on the proper thought and the proper speech. And when it's founded properly, then nifal gam b'hem, then this brings importance to thought and the speech which preceded the deed, which the deed is the main thing. Al derech kafishu benogea, like it is regarding the whole entire chain of creation of God, that by means of serving, making God a dwelling in the world, like we said before, deed compared to thought and speech. We want to make this world a perfect place. This comes by means b'koach v'al yesod diluyim b'olamos elyonim. That's why in Chassidut we learn about all these upper worlds and these different levels before this world. Why do we learn about those things? They're not essential. It says no, because if you learn about the upper worlds, then you have the proper perspective and thought to appreciate God. God is not spiritual. God creates the spiritual. Oh, God is bigger than I think. And also speaking about it. When you pray, you say the words, that's also it inspires your heart. That's what we learned about in Likutei Torah. And that brings the deed to actually fix the world in reality. This brings an aliyah, this brings an elevation and a revelation of godliness also in the upper worlds. We say that by thinking about them and learning about them, the main thing is the deed. But when we do the deed preceded by thinking about the upper worlds, then this causes an elevation even in the upper worlds. Even though that the upper worlds, it says, is just a descent from the light of face of God, but that's nothing compared to when we do a good deed in the world, and the deed is done genuinely. So in order for it to be done genuinely, we have to think and speak properly preceding that. According to this, now we can understand what we should do now. According to what the Tzemach Tzedek said, make here the land of Israel. Remember, that's how we started this. What does that mean? We're going to find out, God willing, tomorrow.